You're welcome back to Morning Ireland. We're going now to that news of a possible natural gas find in North Leitrim. The company involved, Tamboran, say initial studies confirmed the presence of a field which could deliver substantial quantities of gas for the next 40 years. The problem is the gas would have to be extracted by the process known as fracking, something which has been controversial in many places. The government, as you probably know, has commissioned a report into the potential effects of that practice. With us are Tony Bazley, who's Director of Tamboran, and Michael Colreavy, Sinn Féin TD for Sligo North Leitrim. You're both very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Tony Bazley. Can the company say categorically that this gas is there in Leitrim and Fermanagh?
We are fairly certain that it's there. We can't say absolutely certainty, but it's very probable in comparison with similar areas in the United States.
You're making some big claims for this field. 600 jobs, you're saying this morning, 40 years of supply. How can you make those claims?
Well, it's by comparison with elsewhere, and we've done 12 months' work now, and we thought this was the time to come out and tell people just the size of the potential there. We're just looking to go to the next phase, which would be test drilling in about 2 years' time. And we know that we're going to be regulated very heavily to get that far. You mentioned the EPA there. We trust them. We trust the planning board. We have to jump a lot of hurdles to make sure that what we're doing is absolutely safe. And we've undertaken not to use any chemicals in the hydraulic fracturing process, which is not a new process. And within the last 18 months, there have been over 15,000 wells drilled in the United States with no significant problems.
Let's bring in Michael Colreavy on this before we go back to what you were saying there about not using chemicals. What's your response to this news? Because on the face of it, 600 jobs, 40 years of supply, it sounds like good news for your part of the country.
Yeah, I would certainly say that most people and I would say that if we could use natural resources for the benefit of our people and do so safely, most people would very much welcome it. However, I think we have to exercise caution here. What this proposal is not the result of some impartial piece of work or study. And of course it's in the company's interest to talk up the potential of the project. But there is evidence there that our first priority as legislators must be to protect the health of our people. And there is evidence there that water has been poisoned by the hydraulic fracturing process. It's already banned in France, and just last week was banned in Bulgaria. In England, near Blackpool, there was evidence that some minor earthquakes were caused or contributed to by the fracturing process. And in several states in the USA, there's credible evidence of damage to water. So I think there are a lot of very real concerns out there among the community in which I live. And I think those fears are going to have to be addressed.
Are you saying no then to this process under any circumstances, or are you saying it might be possible, it's just there's a lot of work to be done?
I'm saying that the people will have to look at the evidence that's produced by the Environmental Protection Agency, and it will take very strong evidence to overturn the evidence that people see with their very eyes, the evidence of this practice internationally. You see, it's all right to talk about the billions of investment and the full-time jobs and oil security, and these are very important things. But we have to depend that one of the biggest industries in this country is agriculture. And that's an industry that's there, it's working. And if there was the slightest damage to the environment as a result of any process that's been used, that industry could and would be very, very badly damaged. Tourism, equally. It's an area that's very important for tourism. A lot of people employed in tourism. So what we need to do is look at the evidence, see what's there. As of now, I would say that there'd be very strong opposition to these proposals.
You're saying no as of now. Yeah. Tony Bazley, you heard there what Michael Colreavy had to say. Others from the same area have voiced similar concerns. How would you respond to him?
Well, I welcome the fact that he suggested that it should be looked at very closely, because that's what we want people to do. I've worked in conservation myself in Ireland for the last 10 years. I would be very concerned if it affected tourism. I would be very concerned if it affected agriculture. I don't believe it will do either of those things. I think we can do this safely. I don't think it's going to affect water supplies. Water is going to be held on site. I'm absolutely confident that this particular company can see this through, but we have to prove it to the people, and we're going to prove it to the regulatory authorities. They're not going to let us go ahead unless they're quite happy, and all the elected representatives within the country must look at this very seriously, I think, because it's too important to become an entertainment sideshow or a political football. It is really important.
Of the point made by Michael Colreavy that the evidence is there from other places, this has been harmful elsewhere.
I mentioned earlier that 15,000 wells have been drilled in the last 2 years in the States without any significant problems. There have been some minor problems, but I do emphasise that they are minor problems. This is really very important. There are a lot of young people out in these counties who need work. There are a lot of businesses that are suffering that need this economic injection. We feel this gas has the potential to give that, and we're just saying, give it a chance.
Give it a chance, Michael Colreavy. That's what's being said to you.
The problem is that if you give it a chance and the water supply is poisoned, it's a very bad chance. And this isn't something that would affect just the Lough Allen Basin. If all the counties along the Shannon, if Dublin water supply is going to be fed from the Shannon, that in turn would be impacted. It's a hugely big decision. It has potentially very big impact, and people are going to need an awful lot of convincing to believe that the evidence that they already see of damage been done will not be replicated in this country.
As far as you're concerned then, what should happen next? Where should this process go from here?
I would certainly like to see a ban on fracturing until such time as it can be demonstrably proven that this is safe technology, that it's safe for the environment, that it's safe for people's health, and until such time, indeed, as the Irish government negotiates a proper tax rate from oil and gas, because most of it is exported at the minute with very little benefit.
Yet you've heard Tony Bazley say there that they intend to press ahead with this. They intend to go through the planning process.
Well, from my point of view, I'm sitting with my party colleague Martin Ferris TD on the Joint Directors Committee on Communications, Energy and Natural Resources, and we will certainly be looking at every piece of evidence that comes before us, and we will be looking at the evidence presented by the EPA, and we will be looking at the practical examples of this type of technology being used worldwide.
Tony Bazley, as far as you're concerned, what happens next? Where does this process go from here?
Well, we're going to do a 12-month environmental study in the area. We're going to look at more rock samples, and at the end of that period, probably the middle of next year or towards 2014, we will be looking for this planning permission to go ahead. And we welcome a really thorough examination. We believe hydraulic fracturing has already been shown to be safe, and we don't intend to carry it out unless it is absolutely safe, and we will demonstrate that to people, and the EPA have that on their cards to do that, to look at it quite impartially. We have no influence on them at all. We haven't spoken to them about it, and so we await their judgment, and we're sure that they will suggest that this is just too big to put to one side.
And just finally, on that point, Michael Colreavy, are you satisfied with how the government has been handling this up until now? You have Pat Rabbitte, as we've been hearing there, giving this to the EPA so that they can have a look at the process.
I know that in some of the states in the US of A, that the people living in the areas affected by fracking felt that government were more on the side of the oil and gas companies than they were defenders of people's interests. And one of my jobs will certainly be to make sure that people's interests are to the forefront in all of this.
Tony Bazley of Tamboran and Michael Colreavy, Sinn Féin TD for Sligo North Leitrim. Thank you both for joining us on the programme this morning.
Thank you.